Hello and welcome to the land of the people. The people speak in my comment section and sometimes I listen. Today is one of those days. I just got finished gardening. Was in the garden. I was weeding. Weeding is one of my favorite activities, so I've just finished up that. If you're new here, I do this every now and then. I am Haunted Hippie after all. Government name is Kylie, unofficial title is Satan's favorite daughter or the Antichrist. I go by many names. It's whatever you fancy. And I review horror movies. I swear, I get to that eventually. If that sounds good to you and this feels like the land of your people, then click subscribe. Also click the like button and the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. Today we're obviously talking about Companion, which is a really fun new kind of Valentine's themed horror release. Horror is absolutely popping off right now. I don't know what's going on. It's like the momentum of 2024 has carried over. There's been a new horror movie almost every single weekend and it's not slowing down. Next week we have Hard Eyes, which I will also be reviewing. But Companion, I don't really want to introduce you to this movie because I wasn't really before I went to go see it. I very purposefully stayed away from all the marketing because I loved Sophie Thatcher and I love Jack Quaid. They're enough to sell me. And the fact that it's a horror movie, it's produced by Zach Crager, Roy Lee, I don't need to know anything else. Like, I would have been sold if just one of those people was involved. So I'm not reading you a synopsis or anything. That should honestly be enough to sell you, and the fact that I'm gonna give this movie a pretty glowing recommendation. It's just fun. Like, it's a total popcorn flick, and I feel like in the last decade or so, even more, horror has been doing really what it does best, and it's produced so many think pieces. I don't know if I can credit The Babadook as one of the first to like really do it, but then suddenly everybody finally realized, especially after Get Out, that horror can say stuff about society. Don't get me wrong, like I said, that's what the genre does best. Horror movies do it better than at least half the movies nominated for the Academy Awards every single year. But I have missed a little bit of the fun. We've gotten great slashers. 2024 was an excellent year for horror. The feel of Companion is just something different. Yes, there is a huge social commentary element. You can't ignore it. It's very, very on the nose, down to all the detail of even like the costumes, the hair, the makeup, the overt dialogue that leaves no room for subtext. Somehow it manages to like not be bogged down by that at all, but it actually is the source of the comedy and uplifts the movie. There are a lot of fun twists and turns. I guess that some of the marketing or like early buzz suggested that it was as twisty and as crazy as Barbarian. I would not go that far. I think manage your expectations if you've consumed a lot of the marketing. I don't remind people to do that enough because I have not watched trailers since like 2020. Every now and then there will be some Blumhouse trailer that I'm like, okay, I'll react to this on my Patreon because I do need to be a little bit more convinced here. Or it's just a movie that I know I'm not gonna like, but that doesn't happen very often. Dare I tell you to ignore marketing? Longlegs did a great job. That's not the kind of marketing that I want you to ignore. More like trailers, you know? I heard that the first trailer of this movie did not really give much away and that it should have probably been the only trailer, but then the second, and I think there was a third trailer, right, gave away like the first act turn kind of twist. As I understand it, it kind of gave away like the inciting incident, which I can understand. Like, some people really need to be spoon-fed exactly what they're about to watch, and I just urge you to resist that. For some people, trailers just like genuinely make them even more excited. They get really like, it helps to hype them up. And if that's you and you don't mind the spoilers and stuff, then never mind. You keep on keeping on. But I see so many people who like genuinely manage their expectations based on the marketing. And I just think that we should have learned better by now, especially with some of the stunts that these studios will pull. You know how Scott Foley and Matthew Lillard are coming back to Scream? Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. Should we? They're dipping their toes in with these huge announcements that they know that fans will be excited about because they need to build their goodwill back up brick by brick. Don't trust them. That was a totally weird tangent. I'm sorry, but like, yeah, just don't consume too much marketing for this movie. I'm gonna keep like the first half of this review spoiler free, but I also don't want to be responsible for like hyping it up too much for you because I don't think it's gonna be the new thing in the way that like a Hereditary or a Barbarian was. It's not something groundbreaking. It just is a really, really good time. The characters, first of all, are so much fun. It's a great cast. Megan Surrey, though, I have to say that she was woefully underutilized here. She was the lead in, what's it called? It Lives Inside. So that movie was bad. I really liked her in it it though, and I was like, we should probably keep an eye on her. I like her. And I was right, here she is popping up again, but she doesn't really get to do that much in this movie. She is very much like a periphery character. Still good, but then we have Harvey Guillen. He is a wonderful comedian. He ate up his scenes. Again, slightly underutilized, slightly kind of boiled down to some tropes, but also just loved having him there. Same thing with Lucas Gage. I've been trying to tell you about this man. I've been trying to tell you since Smile 2. Although I am looking at his filmography, and he apparently was in Euphoria. I don't know if it was just like a small, like a guest spot or what. And he also was in The White Lotus. I haven't watched those shows. So am I behind the times with him in actuality? I think so. But also, like, nobody was really telling me. Like, nobody was letting me know. Nobody was singing his praises. Nobody was making as big of a fuss as they should have been about him. His scenes in Smile 2 were my favorite scenes of the entire movie. That's hard to do when you have Naomi Scott doing what she's doing up on that stage. He was my favorite thing about Companion. Ooh. That's gonna be so controversial because of, yes, Queen Sophie Thatcher. She's becoming like the new Anya Taylor-Joy. That's the vibe that I get from like the reviews of this movie so far. Completely earned, by the way. She's been cutting her teeth in horror since Yellow Jackets, really. Obviously, she is fantastic again, but we'll get into more of that with spoilers. Jack Quaid, this isn't really a step in any kind of new direction for him. He was more or less typecast, but hey, he's amazing at these kind of roles, so who cares? I was laughing out loud in the theater at several points, even though none of the comedy is really groundbreaking. The level of callbacks too, you can very much see them being set up in the first act, but they set up a lot, so by the time that some of them come back around, you've forgotten about them, and it makes it even more gratifying. I did think that it made things pretty predictable at times. Sometimes you definitely feel like the formula of this movie, though the entirety of the second act was a shock. Even if you've seen that dastardly trailer that gives up a big chunk of this movie's setup, this movie still has a lot up its sleeve. I do wish that it had gone for more of a hard R rating in terms of the gore. This movie really is first and foremost a comedy. Even though in some scenes there is a decent amount of blood, it's never played up for the bloody value. The intent is always being funny, so you're never lingering on violence really. If there's a lot of blood, they're not giving you a full frontal of the gushing wound. It's R-rated in the sense that they use F-bombs a lot. I'm not somebody that needs gore, but in this movie particularly, I think it would have made the whole thing feel just a little bit less juvenile. I feel like Jack Quaid just has the demeanor to make juvenile humor work. He seems really self-aware, and it's just something about his delivery that I can get on board with it. Sometimes though, the framing of the movie would seem to suggest that like queerness itself was at the butt of a couple of jokes. There were one or two moments where I was like, does this movie like want me to think that this moment is funny just because it's happening between two men? Like I said, a lot of the humor not exactly groundbreaking. Majority of the time the comedy was for me though, and I just feel like I haven't had that good of a time at a theater in a long time. Don't get me wrong, like I said, 2024 was an excellent year for horror, almost on par with 2022. I walked out of the theater a very happy camper many times, and with non-horror too. But to have a popcorn horror that's more of a comedy, that I felt so relaxed and happy to be watching, that when I walked out of the theater, I felt like, oh my god, that was the highlight of my day. It's been a while, I don't know. I felt the same way when I walked out of Y2K, where it was just like, oh my god, like, are stupid comedies actually so back? This one is not a stupid comedy, to be clear, it just is so lighthearted. I guess just with a lot of horror movies, yeah, sometimes they're weighty, and this managed to be an R-rated horror movie that just like didn't put any of the weight of the world on my shoulders. Now, a lot of men are not gonna like this movie. I don't really think that they're the type to be self-aware enough to like see themselves in this movie. I think a lot of men are not gonna like it, and they're like not gonna understand why they don't like it. This movie is definitely for the girlies. It definitely came out at just the right time, I feel like, historically. Is it a really rudimentary take? Yeah, but like, I don't care because of how fun the packaging is. It almost gave me sort of like the essence of like a Jennifer's Body, but without being too emotionally weighty. So if you're a Jennifer's Body girl, if you like Lisa Frankenstein, if you were kind of rooting for Don't Worry Darling and you want something better, Companion Companion's definitely gonna be for you. I highly recommend this movie. But all that being said, it's time to get into spoilers. I'm gonna get into like a little bit of a plot breakdown and just sort of react to major plot points as we go along. So in the beginning of the movie, when they're just on their way to the cabin and we meet all the friends and everything, I was not suspecting her as a robot. I had seen the one trailer of her where her eyes are white, I think before going into the movie, but that was a while back, and so I think that at that time I did have my suspicions about, okay, is this gonna have something to do with AI, like it's called Companion? I had a sense, but then I'd sort of forgotten about that when I actually walked into the theater. So right away, my expectation was thrown off. I was like, oh wait, oh, she's a human. Like, oh, they're both human? Okay, right on. So this is gonna be something else. But then there were a lot of these little hints. First of all, her wardrobe. All of Iris's outfits were giving so, like, my grandma would wear that. They were giving so 60s with the checkered patterns and then also the headbands. That was my first tell that something was kind of off. I literally was thinking to myself, I was like, oh my god, I was like, who in 2025 dresses like this? And if you do, no shade, obviously, like, she looked so cute in those outfits, but I was like, okay, at the very least, they're setting her up as a little bit more of like a traditional womanly figure. Then she took a shower and she left her makeup on, and I was like, no woman in the world does that. And then knowing everything you know after watching the movie, it's like, okay, that feels like it's kind of a play on the fact that women would always, you know, wake up in movies with a full face of makeup. Like if you watch White Christmas from 1953, those girlies don't even take off their fake eyelashes and bright red lipstick before going to bed. Kind of playing off this like male expectation of how women should look all the time. So that's what I mean by like it being kind of predictable in the first act, because typically those are things that upon a second viewing you pick up on and you're like, oh, cool detail. I was picking up on those like all throughout. There's also the fact that she didn't have any alcohol when she first got there, like we don't see her eating. Also her little speech at the table where it's like, you just know that like for the rest of time you have to make this person happy. And not me, maybe for some people, I don't think that's a good way to live, and this movie's telling you that. Then when Sergey is trying to come on to her and saying that that's what she's for, they show a little like thumb drive looking thing in her suitcase, and it's just like, okay. Oh my god, and the conversation with her and Kat, where Kat is like, I'm just an accessory, like he just uses me, you know, for sex whenever he wants, and I'm there to look pretty and I do whatever he says and blah blah blah. And she's like, oh, well, look who I'm talking to. Everything is very, very heavy-handed. Where I feel like the difference between this and Barbarian is that the Barbarian felt so genuine. Like the interaction between, what are their characters' names? Georgina Campbell and Bill Skarsgård, whatever. Their interactions feel like real conversations that I have had with men, and like wading into those waters and like seeing if it's a safe situation. Companion felt like the dialogue is telling you everything. Anyway, she kills Sergey and it's awesome. It's so funny. Oh wait, another thing that I didn't mention is like when he finishes with her and then tells her to go to sleep. That was, I think, the moment that I knew that she was a robot. But I still wasn't making anything absolute in my brain because, you know, I still don't know for sure, not 100%. So then when he tells her, Iris, go to sleep and her eyes go white, that was a cool moment. That was a big moment. Then when we start getting into all the backstory of like how they actually met and everything, then a lot of stuff is slightly reframed with Jack Quaid's character. Josh, that name is too close to Jack. You start to peel back the layers of Josh a little bit though. You already knew that he was a bit of a tool when he just finishes and goes right to bed, and then there's like, you know, no focus on her or her pleasure. But then when he explains how their meet cute was entirely fabricated, that was really interesting. And the fact that it's so fuzzy and shiny and things seem great, I was like, oh, this is about dating a narcissist. They're the type of people that seem so shiny and so magnificent and wonderful in the beginning. And if you've never been love bombed before, it's awesome. Like how magical is being love bombed before you realize that it's grooming. Love the whole reveal about Kat and Josh planning to steal Sergey's money. There were so many reveals throughout the second act that I just thought were awesome. I did not see it coming somehow that Patrick was also a robot. Despite their whole goofy meet cute story, I found it really interesting the contrast of both of the robots learning what they actually meant to their counterpart. I don't know if there's meant to be anything read into how they're gendered there. Like if it's something to the effect of how Eli does not just simply objectify Patrick. I don't know. It felt like a little bit more of like a plot convenience thing to me later when she's using that age-old movie trick of like, no, remember who you really are and who you really love. She did that thing to him. I feel like it was was more to serve that than anything else. But I love, as soon as the facade crumbles, everything just like flips on a dime. I think that a lot of women have this experience where like you'll keep going and going and going with something, but then once you receive the ultimate ick, it's gone. You are done, and you realize just how thin the line between love and hate actually is. Like one day you're struggling, you're holding on, you think you're gonna like marry this person and move across the world for them or whatever, and the next day you're like, I hate them, blocking them across the board. Illusion is shattered, intelligence goes up from 40 to 100%. I actually like this slightly more regressed take on an AI robot by not making her some genius machine, but actually like maintaining her humanity by saying, oh, well, yes, the limits only allow her to be as smart as an Ivy League graduate. And then everything about her controls ends up coming back at some point. The fact that her voice can change and she uses that not only once to get away in the car, but then also later on I think when they're having like their final confrontation in the house or something. And then her intelligence, how it's eventually put back down to 0, so she's more under his control. You have the unrelated, but the corkscrew, I kept waiting for that to come back up because they introduced it to us and then we saw it again. And I'm like, okay, you set up the weapon twice now, like we know. But then a lot of time had passed, like with the second and third act, that I somehow, despite them showing it to me twice, I had forgotten about it. So then when I'm getting ahead of myself. The language thing also, Sophie Thatcher, her Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch und mein Deutsch ist schlecht, aber I don't know how to say the rest of the sentence in German. I could tell that hers wasn't like great. It was serviceable, it was fine, she was really funny. That was quite a bit of German to learn for like that entire scene. I didn't think that her voice was like particularly robotic in a lot of scenes where she's meant to like switch up and be like, oh, the weather outside is 72 degrees and sunny. It was interesting to me just like how little they leaned into the robotics of it all. But in an effort to humanize her, I think that was worth it. Skipping ahead, Josh ends up then using Patrick as his own robot. Patrick as the Terminator, named after Robert Patrick, who played the cop Terminator in T2, obviously. He did a pretty good job, but again, because these are not super robotified, AI'd beings, they are much more humanized. Like, I wasn't getting that much of a Terminator vibe. Like, maybe not as much as they wanted me to. It was fine. This movie is its own thing, so again, it's fine. Another very surprising moment, like up there for some of the most shocking moments, was when Patrick murders Kat. When she's walking out, gets stabbed in the back. That's a fun little metaphor. The ending was also a little bit like deliciously strung out. I was expecting that there would just kind of be a showdown between Iris and Josh. I really liked when the empathics workers came out and the dynamic that they added to the ending. I like the fact that we get to see like an actual ally to these AI people, whereas earlier you had Eli who he's wrestling with the gun with Iris and he's like, I'm an ally, but, and then he gets shot. The empathics worker then sort of like is able to contextualize that retroactively. That's a real ally, you know, actually like giving her autonomy and everything. And then the ending, of course, is fun with the corkscrew. Loved that moment when it came back. That was pretty grisly. I also really like the imagery of the ending of the movie when she peels off all the burnt skin and you see her robot hand. I particularly liked when that came back around when she sees the other version of herself in the car with this man, and they went full out with the sort of 60s aesthetic there. I think it was an older car, right? And she's got the blonde hair and he's just like talking at her and she's just smiling. Very like lobotomized vibes. And I am only half kidding there because genuinely back then, like men would have their wives lobotomized if they were like depressed and stuff. Yeah, not good. But when she waves at her with the hand, it's like, look girl, I got out, I'm driving my own car, I got a lot of scars on the way, but it was worth it. That's what I was reading into that moment. Thought it was beautiful. I think it's that moment alone that's made so many people walk out of the theater and just be like, good for her! Good for her! It was certainly why I made my Letterboxd review, you know, basically just like a signal to dump him, leave him, get out of there, go, dump his sorry ass, etc. I think that's why Jack Quaid posted about this movie and he was like, go out with a date, see companion, or maybe not. I don't know if this will be the movie to like wake some girlies up, I'm not sure, just because it is such a popcorn kind of lighthearted flick, but maybe that's exactly why it'll be so empowering. I mean, remember Barbie? As someone who personally got out of a narcissistic situation pretty early on, there was a lot that I could relate to about this, there was a lot that I couldn't relate to about this, but as a whole, there's gonna be, I think, kind of this like broad sense of relatability if you've been through something similar, because not all those situations look the same. Some of us are very no bullshit, strong-willed women that just like have never been love bombed before, so they don't know what that is. Oh my gosh, my boyfriend's calling me. Hello, you're on speakerphone on the wanted Hippie channel.
Oh my god, I am the 100th caller.
I'm just recording a video, by the way, you're not live. Naturally, that phone call just made me completely lose any train of thought that I was unraveling. But no matter, we made it to the end of the movie, and I think that I was finished with my thoughts. The moral of the story is find a good man who doesn't roll over when he's finished, and I think that's my final word. If you enjoyed this, then I hope that you stick around. I hope that you have clicked that subscribe button, and if you haven't, I'm gonna control you with my phone, and I'm gonna make you do it. And also, you can check out my second channel. That's where I talk a lot about physical media. I'm so excited for whenever this gets a release. I hope that it's in like really cute pink packaging. I'll be sure to talk about that over there when the time comes. I also post a lot of travel content over there. It's just a hobby channel. I do whatever I want. And then you also get a weekly bonus video on the Patreon, depending on which tier you join there. Lots of other content from me. Don't stop here. I also just started a brand new series on TikTok, so follow me at Haunted Hippie over there. More than anything, I just want to thank you if you made it to the end of this video. Also a huge thank you to my wonderful patrons. I just hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye.